Let's talk about your boy, Jonathan Taylor. DLF posted their February Dynasty ADP non-superflex rankings. I'll put those on the screen now. Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty startups. Right now, average draft position, the second overall pick, the 102 in Dynasty startups. So a rookie running back for the Colts, coming off a pretty strong year. Alex, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. What do you think about that second overall ranking? Is that where you have him? Is that too high? Too low? If you have him at the 101.
I think it's reasonable. I mean, to me, the clear distinction we have to reiterate here is non-superflex. We're talking one QB leagues here. So we know we're not going to take a receiver that early. We know the running back run at the start of those drafts is going to be pretty long. And CMC is still the locked-in 101. I know there's been some trade rumors, at least at the time of this recording, that CMC could be on the move. If he was on the move, who knows? Maybe that conversation opens up. But as long as he is a Carolina Panther, no matter who the quarterback is, as he's proven over the past two seasons, CMC is locked in at that one spot. And at the two spot, I think I personally, even as a Colts fan, would take a Saquon Barkley or maybe even a Dalvin Cook. I think those guys are right there at that 102, 103 spot. But JT is in the conversation there. I think for me, CMC is the one. But between Dalvin, Saquon, and JT, I think that's kind of another tier there as that second tier of running backs. And you can take those three in any order. And I think there's a case to be made. For JT, the question for me is just, can he catch enough passes? I think he's proven he can be a quote unquote workhorse running back on the ground, get the volume there, get the touchdown upside behind that good Colts O-line. We'll talk about Wentz later, but he is an upgrade, in my opinion, to Phillip Rivers and what we saw last season. But to me, it's, can Jonathan Taylor catch enough passes in these PPR formats to have value? Last year, Jonathan Taylor, 36 receptions with Phillip Rivers, a guy who throws to the running back a lot. And if you look at other workhorse running backs, these elite running back one type guys we've seen over the past couple seasons, I don't need to talk about CMC or Kamara there. We know what they do through the air. But even Zeke last season, we think of him as a ground and pound guy. We think of him, okay, he adds a little bit through the air. It helps, but it's not taking him over the top. Zeke had 52 receptions last year to JT's 36. Dalvin Cook had 44 receptions last year to JT's 36. Saquon, the last time he was healthy for a full season, 52 receptions. So Jonathan Taylor with the 36 receptions he saw last season, that was good. That was solid. We saw the value go up. We honestly didn't think he was going to have that much receiving work, especially with Nyheim Hines there. So moving forward, can JT stay at that 35 to 40 number, or can he even push that to 50 receptions in a season? Because if he can, we've seen what he can do on the ground. To me, that's the big difference between, is he a guy at 102 or is he a guy at 107?
The pass catching questions were all answered for me this year because he was hyper efficient, one of the highest yards per receptions amongst all running backs. He was great through the air. He was just splitting that work with Nyheim Hines. JT, was going at 101 or 102 in 2020 rookie drafts. He has the prototypical size and speed. We know that. And I think you mentioned Zeke there. I think JT is the closest player we've seen to an Ezekiel Elliott, a three-down, do-it-all running back in a while. Marlon Mack, talking about some of the situation there in the Indy backfield, Marlon Mack is pretty much done. He's going to need essentially another season to get back to 100%. Even then, Achilles injuries for running backs are almost impossible to recover from because they need to cut so much. Who knows? Maybe Mack just gets let go in free agency. Nyheim Hines there as a scat back doesn't bother me at all for JT because I can keep him fresh. I can keep the defense on their toes. We've seen guys with similar situations have plenty of value, like Zeke and Tony Pollard. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott was kind of like that too. So Nyheim Hines being there doesn't really scare me too much. But I think Rivers leaving is definitely going to impact the check down volume. Granted, Wentz was still targeting the running back a decent amount with Miles Sanders, Darren Sproles in Philly. But I think JT's just shown enough production to be a top 3 dynasty running back. He was top 10 in fantasy points per game last season as a rookie, finishes the RB6 on the year, a dominant back half after a rough patch mid-season, and a true league winner in 2020 redraft leagues. And for running backs, we index youth higher at that position than almost any other position. Jonathan Taylor just turned 22. He's only going to improve with more time in the league. If we compare it to the other running backs that would be in that top 5 conversation at the older and the younger end, it's McCaffrey's almost 25. Saquon just turned 24. Kamara's 25. Dalvin Cook is almost 26. In 6 months, he will be. Dobbins and Swift are about the same age as JT. Akers a few years younger. So if we're looking for a mix of production, youth, profile, JT checks all the boxes. That's why he's the 102 here. I think it's a pretty spot on ranking. Maybe the only thing for me is maybe Saquon over JT.
Yep.
As far as rookie pick value, I mean, I got offered the 101 for Jonathan Taylor in our league. Instantly shut it down because I need 2 first-round picks, ideally with one in the top 4 picks, if I'm going to move Jonathan Taylor, which puts him at that 102, 103, 101 startup value. So I love what DLF has here. I think it's pretty accurate. I think it's a spot-on valuation for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, weeks 13 through 17, although it's a small sample size when Taylor came back from COVID, RB1 over that stretch in fantasy. So, Taylor to me has the upside to get there. Certainly, if he starts to get more snaps, he'll get there. That's the big concern, though. Like, I'm glad you brought up Saquon Barkley as someone you would probably or at least consider taking over JT because that's where I'm at, too. I think I still would definitely take Saquon there because if you look at Saquon's game, it's as simple as looking at his game logs. He's playing 80, 90, 95% of snaps each and every time he's on the field and healthy. And with Jonathan Taylor, he was over 70% of snaps. I know he was a rookie, but over 70% of snaps one time last season. And it was in that last game where he absolutely went off. So that was kind of like a little peek behind the curtain. Like if you unleash Jonathan Taylor, that showed us everything he can be. It's that Derrick Henry type production, that last week. 30 carries, 253 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 1 reception for 1 yard. Like, that's a Derrick Henry type of stat line. So if Jonathan Taylor can get that kind of work on the ground, if that is his upside, and he can sprinkle in some of that receiving work as well with the efficiency that he showed last season, I think it's there. But with a guy like Saquon, you just know the snaps, you know the volume, you know the receiving is going to be there. So I think he's a little bit safer of a pick. But if you have JT, you got to be really happy. So I know in the Dynasty League we're in together, Steph, you're pretty happy with that JT share that you got.
100%. And I think the biggest difference between Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, outside of their, how they play and their skill set, Saquon Barkley was also the 2nd overall pick that the Giants took. He has insane amounts of draft capital. Jonathan Taylor, 209, so early 2nd round, nothing to balk at. But when we look at correlation between running back breakouts in the NFL, the number one piece of information there that dictates a breakout, that correlates to a breakout season, is first-round draft capital. So for Saquon Barkley, that's why I'm still indexing him a little bit higher over JT. So I think he's at, I think our consensus 103 from this conversation. I would gather that. But 102, certainly not going to debate too hard.